Welcome to the next episode of Hidden Gems. Today, I have a very special guest, Radu from the Bware Labs project. Radu, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Really excited to be here. I've been watching some of your podcasts and I always thought they were very interesting. So it's really good that we got the chance to be here as well.
Thank you. So all credit goes to the community. We have an awesome community and supporters and customers. So let's talk about yourself. Like, how did you end up in the crypto space? What led to Bware? What was the impetus? What was the starting point for starting a company?
I was actually introduced by our CEO, Flavian. We are university colleagues. And at some point, he was working for another infrastructure startup within the Web3 space. They needed some help on the product development, and I had some free time, so I joined. And then we also increased our team with 3 other folks that we knew from different jobs, and we created a all-Romanian team inside that startup. And at some point, we were working in integrating blockchain into a cloud platform at the time. And we discovered that back in 2020, the infrastructure services were a little bit not so reliable, let's say. So we thought maybe we can bring some true reliability into the Web3 space when it comes to infrastructure services. So that's how Bware Labs started. We initially started with our first product, which is also our flagship product called Blast. And Blast is a blockchain API platform that aims to provide high performance blockchain access while also being decentralized. And at this point, we can safely say we did it. Blast features one of the best performances in terms of speed and reliability, even after it was decentralized 2 months ago. So after that, Bware Labs became a lot more than just a blockchain API provider. We started getting involved at multiple levels on different blockchain ecosystems that we are participating in. And now we have a pretty sizable validator business. We try to get in testnets as early as possible, try to help testing and working with the teams towards the mainnet launch, and then provide a whole suite of other free services that would help boost blockchain adoption. We build faucets, snapshot services. We also do app chain development and consultancy, and a lot of other connected services to the infrastructure side of blockchain.
Got it. Okay. And so how do you distinguish yourself from an API or an RPC? Like, where in the landscape do you slot yourselves in?
When we talk specifically about Blast, we are an RPC provider in the Ethereum space. Of course, we also support non-EVM chains, which often have HTTPS protocols or just WebSockets or GraphQL. But the idea with Blast was, first of all, to have a reliable service that, because we thought it was too commonly accepted in Web3 to have failures in terms of product users having to do multiple tries to achieve a simple task because it failed, and sometimes these were related to infrastructure. So our first mission was to try to be as reliable as possible, and we saw decentralization as one of the driving components to achieve that. But we soon realized that decentralization in itself poses a problem when it comes to performance. And by performance, I mean speed and latency and so on. And by discussing with different potential customers, we soon realized that for an enterprise level company, when they get to choose between decentralization and performance, they most often than not choose performance. So the next challenge was to have the same or better performance than the traditional centralized providers and do it decentralized. And that's what we work towards. And now this is the main mantra of Blast. Be faster and more reliable and keep the permissionless decentralized components as well. And I think that's the main differentiator, because when you're decentralized, you get a whole lot of other advantages, like a broader geographical distribution of your nodes, which means that we will have a better reliability. And also because all node operators within Blast are incentivized using our own token called INFRA, we can afford to have higher margins, which means lower costs for our customers and very flexible way of doing things.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so let me ask a more foundational question. Why decentralized? What is the benefit of decentralization?
One of the main benefits of decentralization comes to better reliability and better trust, because you don't have to trust just one infrastructure or RPC providers, but rather group or a big pool of infrastructure companies that come together to supply RPC APIs to customers. So basically, this increases trust on the part of the customers, because when you are a new provider and you have to work with, let's say, a blending protocol or a DEX, trust comes a little bit harder when it comes to managing assets. So they naturally go to established players. But when the entire infrastructure is not supported by just one player, but rather by a group of people that work together as operators to provide the best services, then you get more trust for the platform. And also decentralization comes with the benefit of better costs and better geographical distribution and better reliability overall. So that's why we thought decentralization would be the way to go. It's also the mantra of Web3. So we have a saying within the company where it's something we believe in, that an application is as decentralized as its most centralized point. So what's the point to build a dApp on a decentralized blockchain if your access to the blockchain is controlled by only one player in a centralized way? So it kind of defeats the purpose, right? So that's why we try to decentralize access to blockchain, but make it so that customers don't see the difference at the performance level. If you ask me, I think that's also the main challenge of Web3. Create products that make it invisible for their users that they are decentralized. They work so well that people don't even realize these products work in a decentralized fashion.
Got it. What has been the biggest technical challenge getting this system to work?
I think the biggest technical challenge was the decentralization itself. Running an RPC provider company is quite easy, right? Because you have a load balancer that routes requests to a pool of nodes, and then you put a web interface in front of that, and that's it. Of course, it comes with a lot of features around it, but the gist of it is that you have a load balancer in the front end, and that's it. Making it possible for different operators to permissionlessly join the network, and also making them provide a high level of performance, that was the biggest challenge. So in order to do that, we have developed an integrity protocol. We actually have a concept that we internally call proof of quality. So this integrity protocol actually monitors all nodes that supply requests within the platform and checks their performance within 4 dimensions. One is uptime, because that's kind of obvious. Then we check for latency. There are different thresholds of latency, and they get scored based on that. We also verify for data integrity and sync status. And all these components create a score. We have a scoring algorithm with different weights, and based on this score, providers get rewarded smaller or higher APY. So basically, as a node operator within Blast, you get as much rewards as the bigger quality you provide. Also, for the nodes that go over a certain threshold of latency, or for the nodes that don't serve in correct data, they get jailed, and for the jailed period, they don't get any rewards. So that's a way of forcing nodes to behave within the standards of Blast.
Got it.
In order to do that, we had to run the platform ourselves for 1 year. We had exclusively our own nodes. We have monitored and benchmarked nodes during this time, and we came up with what would be the requirements that we need from our operators in order to provide the level of quality that we want. And then the integrity protocol was written based on that.
Who are the node runners today?
They range from individual providers that run nodes during our testnet, and they did well and received sufficient rewards for them to be able to run nodes in mainnet as well. But we also have a couple of infrastructure companies that are really well known within the industry. I think some of the biggest names in terms of validators that we have serving requests in Blast are Figment. We have P2P, POps, Nodes Guru, Republic, Dokia Capital, Taking, Bharvest, Infinity Stones. It's funny that almost all of these companies are also some of our collaborators in the validator space. We basically work together within different testnets, but somehow they found it interesting enough for them to be an operator on Blast. So
now let's talk about the technology here. You have a routing engine. So let's say a RPC request comes in. Is this read and write, or is it only read? It's both
no,
read and write.
it's read and write. It's basically blockchain access. We don't focus on historical data except for the archive node part. But we don't have like Covalent indexing capabilities. We just have blockchain access for developers.
Got it. So a request comes in and it hits, let's say, a gateway node, and this gateway node is centralized today, or is it decentralized? Like, what endpoint are developers hitting?
So this part is still centralized. We are in phase 2 at the moment, in which we have this node, or we call it proxy. It's a custom proxy server that we have built, which has a routing algorithm developed in C++. And the way routing is done is by taking into account a couple of elements. One of them is the geographical proximity. So we basically geolocate the request and we find the closest node to that request generator and route it to the closest node. But that's not the only component. We also check for load on each node in the pool, and also latency. Because basically, even though a node doesn't have sufficient load, it might be a bad machine and latencies could still be poor. So we basically take all this into account, and we have a linear regression algorithm that calculates the best route so we can provide the best latency coming back to the customer. And that part is still centralized. The way it will be decentralized in the future is similar to a warden model. I don't know if you know how the Avalanche bridge works. It basically has 8 wardens that validate each transaction validity before the bridging gets done. So it will be something similar to that. We'll slowly decentralize first with 4 proxy companies that will run the proxies, and then we will increase the number, and they will have to have a consensus. So basically that would be, and also this will be done with the integrity protocol as well.
So let's walk this through again. A request comes in and it hits this centralized proxy. The proxy has essentially a model of the entire network based on performance, and it routes the request to the specified server. And then the server responds, and then it's proxied back. And then periodically, all of the servers that are servicing these requests, they upload all of their stats, let's say like string status, their latency, their uptime, blah, blah, blah. And that's what is kept in that regression model for the next round of routing. Now, if you were to decentralize the proxy server itself, would a developer have to pick a specific server, or would you use like a DNS that resolves? Like, how is that piece going to work? Because you can have proxy servers that are joining and leaving the pool, and it's just disruptive for the developer to change the endpoint.
It will still not be fully decentralized, because anyway you will have a front end, right? And it will not hit directly the the nodes, it will still have to go through a server that routes to the closest proxy run by someone, and that proxy will route to the best node based on the algorithm that I was specifying. So that's a challenge that we still don't have an answer for yet. I don't think anyone has at the moment. We've been still working. We do have proof of concept that we're working on, in which, as you said, actually, the customer will be able to select the node that it routes requests to, and they will be able to settle the number of requests and the price per request between themselves. So it will be basically transferring the responsibility to the customer, but that will not be the only option. So basically, if you want to use the managed blast services in which we do the routing, or you will want to actually discuss directly with the proxy being or the relayer node. That will be, I think, phase 4 actually.
Very cool. And so before we get to this, maybe you should outline what the different phases of the network are.
So yeah, the phase 1 was the centralized application, in which we have the front end, the back end, and the nodes ourselves. That was running for about 9 months in production. We were trying to see what are the corner cases, what are the worst things that can happen to a node, what would be the specifications, the configs that are needed from the operators. The second phase is the phase that we are in now, in which the nodes behind the infrastructure are run by different operators. We already know what are the requirements for those, and we are testing the integrity protocol and the proxy. The third phase would be where different operators run the proxies and the integrity protocol, and they have to, in the integrity protocol, there will be a consensus where they will have to agree if a node gets jailed or not, or on the score. And then the fourth phase will be giving customers the option to select which proxy node they will use. Otherwise, they can simply choose to use a managed service through Blast, and we will do the routing for them. We will leave to the customer the option of being fully decentralized, or if they prefer to not take that responsibility and let us manage the routing for them. So, because I know probably in your experience as well, if you have an option like a centralized provider somewhere, and it makes it a lot easier for you to pay and just get the endpoint and don't care about it, there's a large chunk of the market that will probably prefer that because they don't want the hassle. So that will be also an option, always an option in Blast. If you care about full decentralization, then you'll have the option to practically select the operator and settle the transactions between the proxy node and the customer.
Very cool. Okay. The other question I have is, what is the role of the Bware token?
So the token has the role of incentivizing the node operators. Right now, operators only run blockchain nodes as they come, vanilla, let's say, and they registered it in Blast. They have to pass a series of onboarding checks that basically are checking the same thing that integrity protocol checks afterwards, but we don't want to onboard any nodes that don't match those criteria from the beginning. Once they pass the checks and become active, they can create a staking pool, stake a minimum amount of 5,000 INFRA tokens, and then they start receiving rewards based on their performance. So the token has the role of allowing us to decentralize the platform by providing incentives for people to run both blockchain nodes and proxy nodes at the next level. So that's why we use the token. There will also be a payment option. Blast right now only accepts crypto payments. We accept stablecoin USDT and USDC on 9 different networks. And in the near future, like the next 2 months, we will also have a infra payment option where you will get discounted prices by paying with the infra token, basically trying to get it back into the protocol.
Got it. Okay. What's next for Bware?
Well, already told you about the next two phases of decentralization. That's one goal that we have for the next year. We are also working on a better routing mechanism. It's currently in research, let's say. We already use a linear regression to find the best routing option. We are trying to train some AI models to see if by benchmarking we can get a better latency result doing that. So that's one of the things that we are working on right now. I'm not saying that it will also be released because it's at the research phase, and it only makes sense to put it in production if it's going to be better than the current algorithm that we have. Then there's also a little bit of a shift in paradigm in the way we do pricing. Basically, right now we are doing pricing the way it's traditionally being done by all the providers. We don't see that as the best approach when it comes to blockchain APIs, because Blast kind of scales better since we don't run on our own nodes, thinking about pay-as-you-go model that allows you to pay for what you use at a rate that is similar to the subscription plans, but don't require people to do the estimations from the start, because probably you guys also saw, because you have a similar subscription model, there are companies that at the end they need a bigger subscription where they flow over to a pay-as-you-go model, which is more expensive, or there are companies that do a lot fewer requests than they originally estimated. So for that, we will have a payment model that allows you to pay at the end of the month just what you consumed, making it easier for our customers to purchase requests in Blast. And then there's also initiative where we are thinking about the better scaling system using ETL and some big data technologies to index the entire blockchain within some more powerful databases, and that to be offered as additional service for people that need data at bigger scale, with the disclaimer that that part will not be decentralized. So we'll give people the option to use decentralized API or centralized API. So we didn't even announce those are actually alphas right
Alpha
now.
leaks, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Alpha leak. Amazing. Okay, so I have two more questions. The first question is that the infra token is on Avalanche. Why Avalanche? What is the benefit of that ecosystem? And what is the connection between Avalanche? Are you guys launching a subnet? Like, what is the involvement with Avalanche?
Well, I'm going to be fully transparent here. There isn't a deep technological reason for which we chose that. The token is actually minted on Ethereum. It's an ERC20 and bridged to Avalanche. We didn't want to launch on Ethereum because it would become very expensive for people to claim delegation rewards. We also, at the end of each epoch, in the way that the staking mechanism work, we have to finalize each epoch for each node pool, and it would be very cost ineffective to use Ethereum for that. So we wanted to move to a blockchain that allows for better pricing, and Avalanche is a very close partner of Bware Labs since the beginning. They were actually investors in both of our rounds, in the seed and the Series A. We are one of the wardens on the Avalanche bridge. We've been working closely with them. And it's one of the things that we like about Avalanche is the professionalism with which they handled everything infrastructure related. I think we are running 25 networks in Blast right now, and you have to do updates on nodes like 2 times a month. And in these 2 years, Avalanche is the only ecosystem that never had a failing update. So basically, it was based on the reliability of the chain and the close relationship we had with the team. We don't see the need for creating our own subnet for the infra token. We do offer subnet development and consultancy services, but that's for other customers, not for our own use. So yeah, Avalanche was chosen based on the relationship and the reliability of the ecosystem.
My follow-on question here is the payments and the settlements, they're done in the memory space of the proxy server. How do you know how much each API key or every customer has consumed in terms of data?
Basically, the payment is managed off chain. We have a user management service, and that injects the metrics for each user into a Redis database that is then read by the proxy server, and the proxy does the rate limiting and verifies the amount of requests that the user has available and so on. But it's injected by the user management service within a Redis data, Redis cache that is then reused by the proxy. So that's how it's done. And behind that, also the payment, there's a payment service that whenever a user adds funds to one of the smart contracts available on different networks in Blast, there's the payment system registered that into the database, so we know a customer has paid. And
very cool. Very cool. Okay, fantastic. My final question is that what are some words of advice that you have for builders in this space?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, actually. Well, I think my biggest wish when it comes to Web3 is to somehow all of us work together to make it mainstream. So for the builders in the space, I would advise, it's more of a general advice. I would advise to pay more attention on the actual quality of the product. And when I talk about quality, I mean the actual reliability of the product across the stack. Be careful what's the products that you use behind in terms of infrastructure, whether it is read APIs, write APIs. And also, I think UX is very important because somehow a lot of Web3 products, I think UX is a little bit overlooked. And I think that is one of the main characteristics of a great product. If you want to attract the masses to Web3, the UX is one of the most important things. You don't have to, a user that is non-technical and it's not crypto enthusiast will not have the patience to do the things the way we are doing it now. So basically make it as seamless as possible and make sure the users have no issue in using the product. I think these are the main things that to focus on.
All right, Radu, that was awesome. That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your time, Radu. I wish you the very best in the next phases of the network.
Thank you as well for having me. And I also wanted to say congrats on a very well-built product in the Covalent Unified API. I remember actually just a minute longer. I remember we were talking at some point inside the company and we were thinking, well, how amazing would it be to have a unified API that a builder that builds on AVM chains could use without actually changing the endpoint. And then Covalent just built it. So that was like a very, very fun thing to see. That's one of the reasons we really wanted to integrate you guys in Blast as a read API provider.
Thanks so much, Radu. Enjoy the rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.